etc. So I will not go into those details again. So introduction, as we already know, my screen and my audio, is it okay? Should I move on?
Yes, it is all okay.
Thank you.
We're seeing perfectly. Please move on.
Thank you. Introduction. The external or internal surroundings of human beings comprise of environment, which plays a crucial role in our health and well-being and productivity. We already discussed these things, but because this is the main theme of our lecture, so I have to put these slides in every class of environmental health lectures. So the external or internal surroundings of human beings comprise of environment, which plays a crucial role in our health and well-being and productivity. So I put the word internal surroundings here. I already discussed these things in our previous class. The internal surrounding means the bacteria, the microorganism living inside our body as well, which also influence our gut health and our overall health of the body. So external or internal surrounding, everything is our environment, which is not exclusively the part of our body. The way we live by reflects in our surroundings and directly impacts the lives of all the living beings around us. Therefore, the study of environmental factors and their impact on human health is extremely important. So learning objectives for today's class are important definitions. This is my style of teaching. I do not teach anything without going through the important definitions first. Brief review of part 1 of this lecture. Impact of environmental factors on human health continued. Yeah, continued. We already discussed 3 environmental factors in our previous class, which were, I think, urbanization, industrialization, and one other factor was, I think, population imbalance. So we already discussed 3 important environmental factors which affect human health in the previous lecture, and there are some other important environmental factors which impact on, although there are many environmental factors, but the most important ones we are going to discuss. So the one of the most important ones, a few of the most important ones which we couldn't cover in our previous class, I will try to cover them today in as much detail as possible. So impact of environmental factors on human health continued. A, combustion engines. B, modern agricultural practices. C, deforestation. D, radioactive waste. E, natural disasters. And F, climate change. I wanted to put a lot of things related to the water cycle and water pollution, etc., but I could not because of the length of the lecture. So first of all, important definitions, I will just go through them. There is no time to go into the details. As you already know, we already discussed these definitions in the previous lecture as well. Environment. I added these slides just for the recall. Environment, the complex of physical, chemical, and biotic factors, such as climate, soil, and living things that act upon an organism or an ecological community and ultimately determine its form and survival. So what is an environment? The complex of physical, chemical, and biotic factors such as climate, soil, and living things that act upon an organism or an ecological community and ultimately determine its form and survival. That is environment, physical, chemical, and biotic factors. Health. Health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being of a person, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. We already discussed the definition of health as well. So environmental health, according to WHO, environmental health is a branch of public health science which deals with those aspects of human health, including quality of life, that are determined by physical, biological, social, and psychosocial factors in the environment. We already discussed the psychosocial factors. What is a psychosocial factor for well-being of a human health? We already discussed this in detail in previous class, so I will not go into these things. So, environmental health is a branch of public health science which deals with those aspects of human health, including quality of life, that are determined by physical, biological, social, and psychosocial factors in the environment. It also deals with the study of those factors in the environment which can potentially affect adversely the health of present and future generation of human beings. So, a brief summary of previous lecture. In previous class, we discussed the basic definitions. We already discussed the basic definitions in this class as well. For a quick recall, difference between environmental health science and environmental sciences, we already discussed this thing. Different types of our environment and components of our external environment. We discussed these things, that what is meant by different types of environment and what is meant by components of our external environment. Then later we started the details of impact of environmental factors of human health, in which we covered population imbalance, industrialization, and urbanization. We will try to move on. So, impact of environmental factors on human health. Environmental factors or pollutants can cause various health problems like mental illnesses, respiratory diseases, heart diseases, and some types of cancers. Similarly, people with low income backgrounds are more likely to live in polluted areas and have unsafe drinking water as compared to those people who have high income backgrounds. Moreover, children and pregnant women are at higher risk of health problems related to pollution. There are various environmental factors identified by environmental health scientists which pose serious health problems to human beings. So, we already discussed urbanization, industrialization, and population imbalance in previous class. Now we are moving towards other important environmental factors which affect human health on this planet. So, A, combustion engines. Exhaust released from combustion engines creates a great havoc in the environment. Combustion engine means any engine which runs on fuel to produce kinetic energy. It can be used in wind turbines, it can be used to generate electricity, it can be used to run automobiles, it can be used to run ships, it can be used to run aeroplanes, etc., etc., you name it. Any kind of engine. It can be a turboshaft engine, it can be a jet engine, it can be a piston engine, it can be any other type of engine, but as long as it is a combustion engine, it releases carbon dioxide as a byproduct. So exhaust release from combustion engines creates a great havoc in the environment. Exhaust of combustion engines is mostly composed of carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, lead, nitrogen oxide, etc., which are very harmful for our external environment. Toxic compounds emitted also include benzene, butadiene, aldehydes, and lately ethers and methanol, etc. So it's not only carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, nitrogen oxide, and lead. There are other micro substances which are also released in the exhaust of combustion engines, which include benzene, butadiene, aldehydes, ethers, methanol, etc. And about 20% of all carbon dioxide emissions originate from road traffic. Now imagine 20% of all carbon dioxide emissions, it's worldwide. It's worldwide. For USA, it's nearly 50 to 60%. For USA, the carbon dioxide emissions from road traffic are 50 to 60%. But if you take a perspective of the whole world, then about 20% of all carbon dioxide emissions originate from road traffic. In 1 year, the average full fuel-powered car produces 4 tons of carbon dioxide, which, as it slowly builds up in the atmosphere, causes global warming. And how does it cause global warming? We will discuss it later. Every liter of gasoline burned up in an automobile engine sends over 4 kg of carbon dioxide, containing 1 kg of pure carbon into the atmosphere. So whenever we consume 1 liter of gasoline, we produce 1 kilogram of pure carbon into the atmosphere. In most parts of the world, the traditional problems associated with industrial production and consumption of fuels are still more important than those due to pollution by motor vehicles. But in the USA, the motor vehicle is considered the main source of pollution. Some 60% of the total weight of pollutants discharged into the atmosphere of United States of America originates from this source. Now you can imagine the main source of carbon emissions in United States of America are automobiles or combustion engines. Data gathered by Environment Canada indicates that overall greenhouse gas emissions in British Columbia increased by 15% between 1990 and 1995. The transportation factor was responsible for majority of that increase, its emission climbing up by 23% during the same period. Then, long-term exposure to exhaust fumes caused a premature death in 1998 of 21,000 people from respiratory and heart diseases in the three countries, compared with nearly 10,000 deaths from accidents. In three countries, 300,000 additional cases of bronchitis in children was related to vehicle emissions, as were 15,000 hospital admissions for heart diseases, 395,000 adult asthma attacks, and 162,000 asthma attacks in children. So all of these things are related to the pollution created by the automobile engines, or broadly speaking, combustion engines. So 21,000 people died from respiratory and heart diseases, which were caused due to the air pollution. And 10,000 deaths occurred directly from accidents. So total 31,000 people died, but out of 31,000 people, 21,000 died from the diseases related to the air pollution caused by the cars and not directly by the car accidents. Now here I added an image which was which is produced by after due deliberations and research in the EU, the transport CO2 emissions in the EU, the range of life cycle carbon dioxide emissions for different vehicle and fuel types. So if you take a petrol car, the green zone means the hydrocarbons used to create energy for the production of any car. For example, a car factory or a car making plant is being run on the energy which is being produced by burning fossil fuels, then the overall vehicle production and disposal uses X amount of fuel in its lifetime. Then there is fuel production. Then there is CO2 exhaust emission. So you can see both petrol and diesel cars are not only using much of the fuel in their production, but they are also using fuel, and they're also creating too much pollution in the name of carbon dioxide exhaust emissions. As compared to that, if we take an electric vehicle, which is powered by energy produced solely from coal, then that is also not sustainable. So in order to make a transition toward electric vehicles, you also need to charge that electric vehicle with green power. You need a solar power plant and a wind power plant to create electricity to charge your electric car. Because if you buy an electric car and the electricity which you are using to charge that electric car is being made in a coal power plant, then you are causing more damage to the environment than solely a petrol car, because the coal power plants and the power plants which use fossil fuels to produce electricity are the main source of carbon dioxide emissions and greenhouse gases emissions worldwide. So if you want to transition towards an electric car, then you also have to charge that car with the electricity produced from renewable electricity sources such as wind power or solar power. So transition towards electric cars is very important, but you also have to take into account the electricity which you are using to charge your cars should also come from greener energy sources. I hope everyone understood. So the second thing, which is a very important environmental factor, and every human being is linked with this environmental factor, because we have to eat the agricultural products, we have to eat the fruits, we have to eat the vegetables, we have to eat the wheat, the rice, and all of the staple diets which are being produced by the modern agricultural practices. So modern agricultural practices such as excessive use of insecticides and chemical fertilizers have lasting effects on agricultural products and are pre-passed onto various animals through the food chain and food web and cause harmful effects on living organisms. Use of insecticides in agriculture has drastic effects on hormonal balance of humans and animals alike. There are hundreds of pesticides that are used in the world. According to WHO's classification, 33 pesticides are very dangerous, 48 of them are quite dangerous, 118 of them are moderately dangerous, and 239 of them are less dangerous, of totally 700 mostly used pesticides. A 75% rate of pesticide usage belongs to developed country. So insecticides which are being used all over the world are a great menace to animals as well as mankind. And the main reason for destruction of forest land to obtain agricultural land is also a problem worldwide. As a result of agricultural land obtaining, greenhouse gases are created at the same time. So using high amounts of nitrogen fertilizers results to soil washing, contaminates to groundwater, drinking water, stream, and sea. Nonetheless, it increases nitrogen amount. This also affects the water organisms, and when that kind of water is used somewhere, they break the natural balance of environment. Additionally, the lettuce and spinach that are grown in the high amount of nitrogen applied soil, it accumulates nitrogen dioxide and nitrous oxide and some carcinogenic substances like nitrosamines, and drinking water shouldn't contain more than 20 parts per million nitrates. So basically, we already know that there are many fertilizers which contain nitrogen, but using excess amount of nitrogen to increase the yield of your crops has also some drastic effect on the health of animals as well as human beings. So drinking water, because whenever we use all of these things for growing crops, at some point somewhere these chemicals start getting mixed with the freshwater groundwater sources of water, and the nitrate content of water increases, and whenever the nitrate content of water increases, it has deleterious effects on the human health. Unconscious use of phosphorus fertilizers also breaks natural balance due to increasing phosphate value in water. Wrong soil tillage without regards of any concern of field location, soil structure, and climate conditions causes soil erosion. This situation not only causes inefficient soils, it also pollutes streams and fills up the dams with soil, etc. So I try to cover the modern agricultural practices one major drawback, and that is the example of testosterone. So we already know testosterone is a male hormone which makes a male who he is. So the testosterone, the male hormone, is a major driver of male reproductive development and function. Now, with the pesticide usage in the last 100 years, it has been seen that in the developed world, the testosterone levels and then the sperm production levels in adult males have been decreasing in every 5 years or every 10 years. So the number of live sperms and the total number of sperms in the seminal fluids of those male inhabitants of the developed world has been decreasing due to excessive use of pesticides. There is a flow sheet diagram. The use of pesticide, I have simplified these things. The use of pesticides decreases FSH and LH levels, and it inhibits Leydig cells and Sertoli cells functioning, and then it decreases the sperm production. So basically it is happening all around the world. The use of pesticides, excessive use of pesticides, has deleterious effects on the male reproductive health. And there is another flow sheet diagram. So intensive tillage causes the effects of modern agriculture practices are described here. So intensive tillage causes soil erosion, soil organic matter loss, greenhouse gas emissions, and affects soil biota. Soil biota means the microorganisms of the soil, which is the natural balance in the soil. And the monoculture means if you start growing same kind of crops over a piece of land repeatedly, like you start growing same kind of crops every year again and again, that is called monoculture. So now if you use monoculture, then loss of natural indigenous crop diversity, it results in loss of natural indigenous crop diversity and rapid spread of pests and pathogens in those crops, as the crop is in excess, and when the pests and pathogens of that crop start appearing in those areas, then they spread like wildfire, because all of the plants all around that area are of the same type, and spread, and the pests and pathogens of those plants just attack that plant, and there is no diversity, so all of those plants get affected immediately within a span of weeks, and all of the yield of the crops, it gets destroyed due to just one pest and one pathogen. So this is the one other drawback of monoculture. Then irrigation practices. The modern irrigation practices using excessive groundwater wells and groundwater tube wells affects aquifer recharge. Aquifer is a groundwater source. The fresh water source in the ground is called aquifer. The groundwater levels fall down and results in the wells getting dried up. Both surface and groundwater contamination by agrochemicals starts to happen. Then there are inorganic fertilizers, which result in soil or acidification, nitrous oxide emission from agricultural fields, eutrophication of the products and water by NO3 and phosphates. Then nitrate contamination in groundwater happens. We already discussed these things. Then synthetic pesticides. Synthetic pesticides not only affect the plants, but also affect the soil biota, pollinators, and human beings. Aquatic contamination affects non-target organisms such as fish as well. High yielding seeds. So high yielding seeds result in loss of indigenous crop varieties, need regular irrigation, demand more chemical fertilizers and synthetic pesticides. So high yielding seeds need a lot of pesticides for their safety, a lot of chemical fertilizers. So it, in the pursuit of perfect things, we have created monsters as well. And then combine harvesters, the combine harvesters create a lot of stubble, and when this stubble is burned, then a lot of the pollution is created with the use of harvesters. Then another important thing is deforestation. We already know this menace is destroying many million hectares of the forest land of our planet all year long. So I will just continue without taking a breath because we are already short of time. So deforestation. is third factor of our today's class, which impacts our health. And it does not only impact our health, but it affects the animals and plants related with the human beings as well. So deforestation refers to eradication of forest land by human activity. So deforestation refers to eradication of forest land by human activity. Forests, a vital component of life on Earth, cover approximately 31% of our planet's land area. However, more than 75% of the Earth's surface has been modified and degraded by human activities such as deforestation. Now imagine 75% of the Earth's top surface has been modified and degraded by human activities such as deforestation. Not only deforestation, there are other human activities as well, but 75% of the Earth's top surface, top soil has been modified slightly or completely degraded. Only 25% of the Earth is safe from human activity till now. I don't think this century is things are gonna get better with this century. I think this century is resulting in more devastation of the Earth's top surface. So it is done to clear up the forest land for some other purpose. For example, creating housing projects, growing crops, developing industries on newly eradicated forest land, getting timber and wood for domestic purposes, and not only domestic purposes but for industrial or commercial purposes as well. So the forest land is getting destroyed, and it is getting destroyed without any controlled way, without any regulation, without any regulatory bodies overseeing this process. So a lot of forest land is being damaged and on every year, and this is worsening from year to year. So deforestation causes soil damage, climate change, community health deterioration, habitat destruction of multitude of plant and animal species, global warming, food insecurity, and causing irreversible damage to entire ecosystems of those regions where previously forests existed, and now there is some industrial plant here, or some housing society has been built, or some monoculture agricultural crop has been grown. So, effects on soil pollution and the water cycle. In addition to their role as carbon sinks, forests are a crucial component of the water cycle and have all important function of preventing desertification. Cutting down trees can disrupt the cycle by decreasing precipitation and affecting river flow and water volume. So whenever we cut trees, the precipitation starts to decrease in that area. What is precipitation? Precipitation means the water vapors again converting themselves into the liquid form. So in the case of Amazon forest, the research shows that at least 80% of its trees would be needed in order to keep the hydrological cycle going. So hydrological cycle is basically the water cycle. So we know that glaciers are formed, then glaciers are melted, and glaciers, whenever the glaciers melt, they release too much of water, and those waters, that water first forms streams, then it forms rivers, then those rivers irrigate lots, swathes of land, and when the land gets irrigated, it results in forests coming into existence. And when these forests come into existence, they create more water vapors, and then in the surrounding region see more waterfall, more rainfalls, and whenever there is more rainfall in any area, the forest lands start to develop. So this is basically a hydrological cycle, and this is a natural cycle of our planet. So statistics show that deforestation in the tropics reduces precipitation over the Amazon by around 10%, or 138 millimeter every year. And in the South Asian monsoon region, the reduction in rainfall is even higher. We are bracing these things. Pakistan is one of the top 10 countries which are affected the worst by climate change. We are seeing some years where there are droughts and there is not even a single drop of rain for months. And then we see some years where there is too much rain within a short span of time, and which results in flash floods. Now, it's not whenever we pray for rain and the rain comes, and it comes down so fast and within within such a short span of time that it causes even havoc instead of being a blessing. So there are two extremes in South Asian monsoon region, and it is all occurring due to the climate change. The reduction in rainfall is even higher, with around 18% less rain recorded in India in a single year. It is the year 2015. I couldn't add a lot of the details because of the length of the lecture. I had to keep the length of the lecture short. So I added this image. This image just depicts what is happening with our planet, and this is not a long story. They started keeping this record, and they just showed the record of last 18 years, and they took the data from 2002 to 2020. And what does it show? It shows the 3-year moving average of millions of hectares of forest land which has been destroyed by human activity. So in 2002 it was around 2.5 million, then 2003 it was around 2.5 million hectares of forest land destroyed by us, then 2004, 5, 6, 7, and till 2014 it was around 3 million. Then in 2016, 17, 18, 19, in 1920 it crossed the barrier of 4 million hectares per annum. So we are destroying the forest cover of our planet in the scope of millions of hectare of millions of hectare every year. And look at the numbers. In 2016 alone, we destroyed 6 million hectares of forest land of our planet. So this is getting dire every single year. Aside from their contribution to water flow, trees help the land retain water and sustain forest life by supplying the soil with rich nutrients. Deforestation deprives the land of its cover, leaving the soil exposed to wind and rain. This makes soil vulnerable to being washed away and prone to erosion. According to WWF, as much as half of the world's topsoil has been lost as a consequence of the nearly 4 million square miles of forest that have been lost since the beginning of the 20th century. So 4 million square miles, it's not about hectares. We talked about hectares in the previous slide, but I'm talking about 4 million square miles of the forest have been lost since the beginning of the 20th century. So they just they are telling us that from 1900 to 2020 or 2021, till the data has been collected, 4 million square miles of forest land has been destroyed by human activity. With the loss of trees and entire forest, homelands are also being destroyed in the process. Indigenous communities of those forests who live in forests and depend upon them to sustain their life bear the brunt of impacts from deforestation. As their houses are destroyed and resources compromised, these tribes are forced to migrate elsewhere and find other ways to sustain themselves. Along with indigenous tribes, animals are some of the biggest victims of deforestation. Forests around the world are home to more than 80% of all terrestrial animals, plants, and insect species. However, the rapid destruction of forests is contributing to a decline in biodiversity never seen before. The main effect of deforestation on animals and plants is the loss of their habitats. Basically, the topic of deforestation is a very important and very long topic. I try to cover it in short 3 or 4 slides, which is not doing justice to this topic basically, but I try to cover it. So now the radioactive waste, I will just go through it. These wastes contain radioactive material that are in a state of nuclear instability and emit ionizing radiation. We already know this. This dissipated ionizing radiation may damage or destroy human or other biological tissue with which it comes into contact. Where such damage is excessive, it may lead to permanent disability or death. Radiation can damage the DNA in our cells as well. High dose of radiation can cause acute radiation syndrome or cutaneous radiation injuries, and high dose of radiation could also lead to cancer later in life. In fact, the most common disease that arises in the people that have been exposed to radioactive pollution in past is cancer. Other dangerous diseases that might be brought on by exposure to radioactive waste include anemia, leukemia, hemorrhages, and cardiovascular diseases. Now, from where does this radioactive ionizing radiation come? So here is the answer. The improper disposal of radioactive waste can severely contaminate the soil and result in soil pollution. The radioactive matter present in this type of waste may mix with the components of the soil, rendering it highly toxic and infertile. Furthermore, any plants grown in such soils may absorb the radiation present in the soil and accumulate it within the bodies. So this is a flow sheet diagram. So if you are exposed to a very strong radiation source, you die within a span of days. And if you are exposed to some sort of weak radiation, then there are headaches, vomiting, and diarrhea. And then if there is long-term exposure, then there are mutations in your body, leukemia, cancers. And if pregnant women are exposed to radioactive radiation, then their babies are born with deformities. And if there is radioactive leakage, then the whole of the ecosystem of that area is damaged. Then there are natural disasters which also wreak havoc, and they are increasing in frequency and intensity every passing year. A natural disaster used to happen previously, but they were not that much intense and they were not that much frequent the way they are now. At least I can give example of my country, Pakistan. We have seen the vast destructive floods in our previous 10 or 15 years, which were not seen in previous 200 years of Asian subcontinent history. So the natural disasters is a major adverse event resulting from natural process of the earth. A disaster is defined as a sudden calamitous event bringing great damage, loss, or destruction. Therefore, a disaster is an actual event having unfavorable consequences, unlike a hazard or a risk, which is a potential threat. So, a hazard or a risk is a potential threat, but disaster is when that threat has embodied. That threat has become real. For example, floods, hurricanes, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, tsunamis, storms, and other geological processes. So all of these things affect our health drastically, as all of these problems create too many diseases in human beings, and when the human beings get diseased, they start to die in numbers. So for example, if an earthquake comes, then it means a ground shaking and structural collapse, and results in injuries to the human being, direct injuries, physical injuries to the human being, and loss of life. Similarly, hurricanes, which are strong storms and heavy rains, they cause flooding and home destruction with the sheer force of the wind. Then there are floods, which are cause excessive water damage, and their consequences are property damage and displacement of millions of people affected by those floods. Then there are tsunamis, which is basically massive coastal flooding. The sea enters the areas of the land. So infrastructure destruction also occurs with the tsunami, and there is loss of life as well if the tsunami is too strong. Then there are volcanic eruptions like volcanoes leaving lava, ash, or gas damage, and it results in property damage and respiratory issues. Then there are natural disasters, and the natural disasters and their death tolls since 1995 till 2020. So then here it is damage on the left side of the graph. There is damage in billions, and that is roughly 250 billions in 19, it's worldwide data, $250 billion in 1995, and then there was too much damage in 2010 and 2011. It's around 400 billion in damages, and 400,000 deaths occurred in 2010 and 2011. It is the same time when Devastating flood also affected many provinces of Pakistan as well, and it damaged at least 200 billion worth of property in Pakistan. So the natural disasters have also caused too much misery and too much death and too much damage in billions of dollars all around the world. Then there is climate change, which is the last environmental factor for today's topic. So climate is often defined loosely as the average weather at a particular place. So an average weather at a particular of any particular region is climate. So incorporating such features as temperature, precipitation, humidity, and windiness are the four factors which which actually form the climate of any region. A more specific definition would state that climate is the mean state and variability of these features over some extended time period. So we take a 50 years average of any country, and then when we take the 50 when we have taken the 50-year average, we can easily say that the climate of this region is the ABC, and climate of this region is DEF, whatever we call it: hot, humid, sunny, or uh, cold and windy and rainy, whatever we call it. And climate change refers to the change in environmental conditions of the earth. This happens due to many internal and external factors. So the overall mean change in environmental conditions of our earth due to our activity is climate change. The climatic change has become a global concern over the last few decades. Besides, these climatic changes affect life on Earth in various ways. These climatic changes are having various impacts on the ecosystem and ecology, and due to these changes, a number of species of plants and animals have gone extinct due to the loss of habitat and unfavorable weather conditions. So the causes of climate change, we already know many causes, such as the use of fossil fuels and combustion engines, etc. The climate started changing a long time ago due to human activities, but we came to know about it in the last century. During the last century, we started noticing the climatic change and its effect on human life. During the past century, human activities have released large amounts of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, and most of these gases come from burning fossil fuels to produce energy. So greenhouse gases are like a blanket around the earth, so trapping energy in the atmosphere and causing it to warm. This is called greenhouse effect, which leads to global warming. So whenever we burn fossil fuels, the greenhouse gases are produced, and these greenhouse gases have a phenomena called the greenhouse effect, which traps the sun's energy inside the atmosphere of the earth. So whenever sun, in routine circumstances, the sun's energy, most of the sun's energy is reflected back into the atmosphere without warming our planet. But in the presence of greenhouse gases, the sun's energy becomes trapped within the atmosphere, slowly and steadily raising the temperature of our planet over the course of decades. According to NASA, the Earth's average temperature has increased about 1 degree Fahrenheit during the 20th century. That might sound like it isn't a great change, but its effect on our environment have proven otherwise. So what causes climate change? Burning fossil fuels. The burning of fossil fuels for energy and transport, like so-called natural gas, oil, and coal, they emit toxic pollution which poisons our air and lungs and are responsible for more than 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions. And I have already told you the greenhouse effect. Whenever there are greenhouse gas emissions, the greenhouse effect strengthens. So when carbon dioxide and methane are released into the air, they trap energy in our atmosphere, which makes the planet heat up. And then there is agriculture and deforestation. They are also causing climate change. Almost all industries engage in the burning of fossil fuels, but some contribute to greenhouse gas emissions more than others, such as energy sector and agriculture and farming sectors. Forests and trees consume carbon dioxide and play a huge role in the production of atmosphere, but they are regularly destroyed. But they are regularly destroyed by intentional forest fires to clear up land for commercial farming. So what are the effects of climate change? Those in lower income countries, especially low-lying small island states and less developed countries, will be and are already among those worst affected by climate change. People in Pakistan, people in Bangladesh, people in Maldives, and all low-lying small island states are extremely under the pressure of climate change as the sea levels are rising every year, and their islands and their low-lying parts of land are coming under sea. So people in these countries have contributed very little to greenhouse gas emissions, but their countries are among the most harmed. Oceans are affected adversely, and the ice sheets are melting at record pace from the last 100 years, resulting in rise in sea levels all around the world, threatening island nations and coastal communities all around the world. All of the coastal communities of Bangladesh are threatened due to the climate change. Their water sources are becoming salty, their rivers are becoming saltwater rivers. So their whole lifestyle is being dismantled due to the rising sea levels in those coastal communities and island nations. Weather changes have also become more extreme, resulting in increased storms and floods in some parts of the world, while increased severity and frequency of droughts in other parts of the world. Then food security has been threatened due to changes in weather as growing crops is becoming difficult. The areas where plants and animals can live are shifting, and water supplies have become scarce, causing newer problems for farmers all around the world. Health problems due to climate change result in extreme temperatures in urban areas of various parts of the world, causing an array of health problems. Moreover, air and water pollution occurring due to climate change causes multitudes of health problems as well. So I added this image. Air pollution is causing respiratory problems. Then there's manufacturing and pollution. Radioactive hazard is causing damage to the whole ecological communities. Hazardous waste is creating fuss in the environment. Then the plants are getting damaged with the plastic waste, and then the water pollution is damaging the ecological systems of the sea and damaging the health of the fish. And whenever we consume that fish, we are also affected by that problem. Have a nice day. Thank you. Any questions? So basically, I didn't have time. I wasted 10 minutes prior to this lecture. So I had to wind it up in very short span of time. I'm sorry for that.
You actually
Any
did
questions,
it.
please?
You actually finished the presentation within an hour. Wow. You were moving fast.
I had to. I had no other option, sir. I'm sorry for that.
But it went well. It was very well done.
Thank
okay,
you,
well, now we
thank
can go to
you.
the question. We have questions in chat.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's go back. Let me find a question here. Okay, what is the science behind the statistics that deforestation reduces precipitation?
The science behind the statistics, basically I'm not a statistics guy, so I don't know the science behind
So I guess the
statistics.
idea is
But
deforestation reduces precipitation. Is there statistical research that proves that?
yeah, there is a statistical research. The climate change scientists are banging their heads against the wall and nobody's listening to them. So the basic problem is we are not still we are not ready to listen, even after seeing the coastal communities vanishing, even after seeing the small islands vanishing inside the sea. We are still talking about the statistical problems and this and that. There is huge amount of data accumulated all over the world. So basically, what is precipitation? Water vapors present whenever we go into forest. The air is humid. There are more water vapors in the humid, and whenever those water vapors touch the leaves of the plants, whenever those water vapors touch the leaves of the cold weather touched plants, they then again turn back into those water vapors, then again turn back into liquid water, and that liquid water starts dropping down to the forest land. And this creates too much of the reservoir for the forest land to remain humid and does not dry up, and that water sports a lot of insects and animals and small species of plants present on the bottom of the forest land, which creates biodiversity and ecological diversity in those regions. So if you remove a forest, tell me, if you remove a forest from for let's say 20 hectares of a land, 20 hectares is kind of big land. If you remove a forest from 20 or 50 hectares of a land in the next 5 or 10 years, the average rainfall in that area, the biodiversity of that area must be affected. Even if you want to close your eyes and say, no, that year rain was a little less, but this year, floods came down. Flood is not a normal rain process. It's an abnormal rain process. The 3 years you just kept praying for the rain to come. You kept praying for the rain to come, and the fourth year, it came in so disorderly manner that um, mm, uh, it came down so fast and within such a short span of time that your whole land couldn't even handle it, and it became a flood. And it even we call that the rain creates greenery, but when the rain is in balanced amount, if 3 years drought is being compensated with fourth year with excessive amount of rain, then all of the rain which will come down in the fourth year will wreak havoc. So that is the problem which we are witnessing in all around the world, and in 10 most countries, including my country, we are seeing this phenomena. We are affected by less rains over the course of 2 or 3 years, and then 4 or 5 years later, there is too much rain, resulting in flash floods. And what do we do of that excess water? It just wreaks havoc without any benefit. So there are a lot of statistics. You just have to open your eyes.
Okay, let's go on to the next question.
There are too many.
I know.
I will try my best to answer them within a short span of time. How does environmental health and safety deal with work hours of 24 by 7?
Yeah, like 24 hours every day of the week, like all the time during the week. So how does environmental health and safety deal with the work hours? So,
Like,
you know what I mean?
I think this question has already been answered in whole of my class, basically. So all of our lives are affected by environmental health factors. So basically, if we're not getting directly affected by any factor, for example, if we are river and we're drinking directly from the river, so what does it do? There is no problem. But there is problem. You are damaging the whole ecosystem of the river. You are poisoning the fish. And there are a lot of people who eat that fish. And their lives are being destroyed by the water being dumped by some urban center from some industry far away, far away on the up end of that river, and any community on the lower end of that river using that fish which has been poisoned by that industrial wastewater, by that community wastewater which has not been treated well. What does it do? If you start eating fish which has been poisoned with heavy metals which are routinely used in many industries, heavy metals like mercury, lead, zirconium, etc. So all of these heavy metals, they poison the fish, and you do not directly drink the wastewater, but you eat the fish. So what happens? Heavy metal poisonings are being seen in the children who consume too much of the fish, which has been uh, poisoned with the heavy waters of the industry. So it's a 24/7 problem. You just have to open your eyes. And the bigger economies of the world are the biggest climate change causers, affecting the less and innocent countries. There was a suggestion of carbon emissions compensation fund. Is it feasible and sustainable? Will it change the situation globally? Well, we do know about that carbon emissions compensation fund. Our prime minister, the former prime minister Imran Khan, kept pleading to the civilized world that we need carbon emissions compensation fund to deal with these flash floods which have been wreaking havoc all across the Indus Valley Plateau. But you have to become America or Russia to gain what is yours. You can't just get what is yours by being a weak country. So that is the problem. People, those countries who are being affected by the climate change need carbon emissions compensation fund. That is their right, because they are dealing with the storms, they are dealing with the floods, they're dealing with the droughts, and they have very low part in the climate change. They have no industrial base, they are not having extreme number of automobiles running on their roads, they are not causing too much pollution through coal power plants like many parts of the Europe, but they are getting affected due to this climate change. But because we are living in a global village, it's just like up end of the river and lower end of the river. If something is being done in Europe or America or any other civilized country by human beings, it will come down to any other part of the world, and the human beings of that part of the world will be affected. We have to think coherently, we have to think collectively, that this is a global problem. This is not a problem of a country. That is why the Paris Agreement was hailed as a success for climate change scientists. But now there are a lot of voices which say climate change is a farce, climate change is not a problem, it's just a farce, it's just a way to collect funds and etc. Look, I do not want to go into the details. I have too much knowledge about this, but I do not want to go into details because it becomes political. The more we talk about it, the more it becomes political. So I think I have to limit the discussion within the scientific levels, within the within the this is beyond, this is getting beyond the scope of our class to discuss politics here. One more question, if Dr. Lambert allows me.
Absolutely.
I can answer it. So what could be the solution to the climate change if irrigation practices affects or contribute to climate change too? Well, that is another important question, but that needs answer on some another level, because irrigation science is some different thing. You have to take care of the groundwater levels, you have to take care of the um, canal system, you have to take care of many aspects when you are irrigating your lands. So I think I cannot answer this question here, because that is an entirely different topic, and it will just, I will not be able to answer it here. Sorry. Any other
Okay. Well,
question?
I do see a question from Diodon. Has his hand raised.
Okay. You can
Afternoon.
ask questions, please.
Good afternoon. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello,
Yeah,
how
we
you?
are listening. There is
Okay.
we are
The problem
we are
for
listening.
protect the environment is not think it's easy, because, for example, in many countries, for example, in Africa, deforestation it is not easy because there is no other system for to protect the trees and other environment to use because, for example, there are people use the trees for cooking, for buildings, their houses, and the many
Yeah,
things, other many things. So
yeah.
it is
The tree wood is a
the
means of life
government,
to
it is
these
the
people.
government to create another system for replacing that needs of their people and to get to protect the environment as the health need to be protected. That is
So,
my opinion, and that is big
yeah,
problem. We have
that
many
that is a
countries.
problem. That is a problem in my country as well, because there
Yeah,
are a lot of communities who
yeah,
whole life system is depending
yeah,
upon that forest
yeah,
and the timber and the wood collected from that forest. They do not have any government supplied gas meters. They do not have any electricity in many parts of the world as well. So what do? They have to sustain their life through the timber or wood of the forest. But the problem
so
here is,
that's why I
yeah, the
suggested that
problem,
they need
yeah, the problem, we need to educate those people. We are not asking them to not cut the tree. There is no other option. They have to cut the tree to earn a living. They have to cut the tree because this is their way of life for centuries. What do they need to do then?
yeah.
If you,
That's so
yeah, I will
the
tell you. I
government
will tell
must
you very, very, very easy way to handle this problem. We did it in Pakistan. We planted 1 billion trees within a span of 4 or 5 years. We planted 1 billion trees. And that was also an initiative of our former Prime Minister, Imran Khan, that he said all of the nation to plant trees. So we planted 1 billion trees, and then he had plans of making us making the whole nation plant 10 billion trees within next 10 or 15 years. So the problem is, if you cut a tree, you plant 10 others. If you cut a
that's
tree,
so
you plant 10 others. It's not difficult. It seems difficult in the start, but it's not difficult when you opt this, because many communities have opted this. You know, the desertification of the Africa, how did they manage to stop it? How did they manage to stop the Sahara Desert? And maybe some of my students are there belonging to those countries who are affected by the desertification of their countries, because the Sahara Desert is coming down south fast every year. So how did they stop it? By planting trees. There is no other option. If you cut a tree, you have to plant 10. Maybe 3 or 4 of them will not grow, but at least 5 or 6 of them will grow. So you replace the forests, you replace the wood within next 10 to 15 years. So you are not harming your communities, you're not harming your ecological system. If you are cutting one tree and you plant 10 trees, at least 5 of them will survive. And they will eventually become fully grown adult trees. And they will sustain your future generations without any problem, because your future generation will be taught to plant 10 trees, and this way the forest cover will increase eventually instead of decreasing. So if people say that we are depending upon these forests and we have to cut them, there is no other way, no, the effort is less. You have to save your life source, and that is a forest. If you are eating your own life source and not creating an alternative, then it is your fault. Yeah, government should provide subsidy and everything, but people have to take a stand as well. Thank you.
Doctor, I just put into chat a link to an organization called trees.org. And
Yeah.
it's an organization that actually gives money to people who want to grow trees.
Wow. Such an amazing thing.
Contact them and ask them how you can receive their support to grow trees where you live.
Yeah,
okay. That's
that is
why
a great thing. That is a great thing, because they will verify you whether you are doing it in real or not. And if they find you doing something in real and you are serious about growing trees in your area, they will help you. Eventually, they will help you. Thank you, Dr.
you
Lambert.
want to work with some of the farmers or some of the youth in your country that want to do this and get them involved and create like a community project where you're getting, and then show pictures of you all getting together and talking about this and put that into your application. It shows your community support and that increases your chances of success to get that money.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay,
Dr.
thank you.
Lambert. Any other
So,
question?
it
Because
means
we're running out of
what
time.
I understand, what I understand, it is the affairs of the government to regulate the exploitation of the forests. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a question from Lumbai. You got one more? This is a really
Yeah, just
important
one more
topic,
question. We got-
Dr. Omer. This is really,
It's
really important.
extremely important topic. You know, I thought of covering it in 2 or 3 lectures, but you know, this is doing injustice. I am just crying inside because you know the topics which we are covering, they are extremely important, and I'm just crying inside of doing injustice to these topics.
I put up,
But you know,
I put up a lot of videos in chat where people who take desert, complete hard packed soil, and then within 2 years they have food growing in a forest. So
Yeah.
it can be done, but there's certain techniques
Wow.
you have to use in order to trap water into the soil, get certain types of plants, and then
Yeah.
start growing it. And then the soil begins to transform. So it can be done even within
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, it can be done. But if you can do it in 2 years, why not in 20 or 10 or 20 years? You can
Yeah,
grow whole forests.
yeah.
You have just to change your way of life.
A forest the size of a country.
Yeah, it can be done. It can be done. It
Yeah.
has been done in many countries. You know, China, they are
Yeah,
growing a lot. You know, I have to take a question, but the China is doing
Hiroshima.
wonders. They are growing
Yes.
too much trees and you know, vegetables and everything in the Gobi Desert. Okay, question. I want to
Lumbai,
take the question.
go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me. My question is just like about radioactive. Well, since the Second World War, when it was Nagasaki and Hiroshima, so why this period the people were giving birth to like informative children, those kind of things? Why sometimes it's still today? So why that takes so long? The period of that, why it's not like stopping immediately and then it's coming until these years? So what caused that?
So basically, there is another science behind what is the radioactive decay. So whenever you have a radioactive process or a radioactive substance scattered all around the environment, it becomes part of the atmosphere of those regions where the radioactive substance has been detonated. And it keeps emitting radioactive radiation for long. I mean, you can just say that for eternity.
Wow.
Its intensity of release of radioactive radiation goes down every passing year. Intensity goes down, but the number of atoms or the number of particles which are producing those ionizing radioactive radiation, they're like in quadrillions in the environment. Quadrillions. I'm not doing justice by just saying quadrillions. I had to say quintillions or whatever. I mean, I do not even know the terms beyond this, but the number of atoms which are basically producing ionizing radiation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki is beyond measure. So when you are in a radioactive zone, you are almost all of the time under the radiation, under the effect of radiation of those radioactive substances. The radioactive substances have become part of your doors, have become part of your walls, have become part of the elements, have become part of the metals, have become part of the water you're drinking, have become part of the soil where vegetables are grown, have become part of the flesh of the animals. So what are you talking about? You have to exclude those areas. So why did they create the Chernobyl exclusion zone? The Chernobyl exclusion zone was created because of this. The radioactive material gets spread to vast areas of the actual event where event occurs. So the vast area affected is declared just because that the humans and animals will be affected. They had to kill all of the animals in the Chernobyl exclusion zone. They had to kill the cats and dogs as well. Why did they do it? Because they knew that those cats and dogs are extremely affected by the radiations, and now they themselves have become the radiation source for other people. And whenever they will go out of these regions, they will become harmful for other human beings living
human
afar
beings.
from these regions. So
Yeah.
that is the problem.
Hmm. Thank you so much for that.